Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air tighten, as if something unseen was pressing against you? Faces smiled, words flowed, yet beneath it all, you sensed currents moving in silence. Currents you couldn't name, but that left you uneasy. It is in moments like these that many discover a hard truth. Most people are not nearly as mysterious as they believe. Their gestures betray them. Their pauses confess more than their speeches, and often, without knowing it, they are being read like a book whose pages they thought were locked. The Stoics understood this hidden game. They taught that real power is not in speaking louder, but in seeing more clearly, to step back, to detach, to notice what others miss. That is the way to move through the world without being moved by it. So let me ask you, what would change in your life if you could see the truth behind the masks, if you could walk into any room with quiet certainty? Stay with me and we'll begin to open that hidden sight together. As we step into the first chapter, imagine walking through a crowded street at night. The lights are bright, the sounds overwhelming, but something inside you feels off. You sense tension that no one else notices. Faces pass, voices rise, yet your vision feels blurred. Not because your eyes fail, but because your mind is clouded. That is the kind of blindness most people live with. They see, but they do not perceive. They hear, but they do not understand. Now imagine the weight of constantly misreading life. You walk into a room and instead of asking, "What is unfolding here?" you ask, "Do they like me?" You hear a silence and wonder, "Did I sound confident?" while ignoring what that silence really meant. You become lost inside yourself. That is how modern life trains us. React quickly, speak loudly, defend instantly. It feels like strength, but it is blindness disguised as certainty. The Stoics pointed to another way. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." Those words cut through centuries like steel. They remind us that the storm is not outside, it is the way we interpret the wind. The fog is not in the room, it is in our mind. And once you clear that fog, you see with a clarity that others mistake for power. Here's where the story begins to unfold. A young man stepped into his first meeting with a senior team. His heart pounded, his hands shook, his words came out fragile. Every neutral glance looked like judgment, every pause sounded like dismissal. When it ended, he walked away thinking, "They must see me as weak." But the truth? A manager leaned forward as he spoke. Another took notes. The leader paused, not to dismiss, but to consider. He saw none of this. Not because he lacked intelligence, but because his vision was filtered through fear. Emotion had turned his mind into a mirror smeared with dust. Contrast that with the Stoic way. A Stoic enters the same room but does not rush to fill it. He breathes, he studies, he notices who interrupts whom, who shrinks when another enters, who raises their tone out of insecurity, and who speaks softly yet is heard most. He sees the rhythm beneath the noise. This is not sorcery, it is sight unclouded by self. So the question rises, how do you step into that discipline? How do you detach without becoming cold? The answer is distance, not the distance of indifference, but of mastery. When a person looks away as you speak, your first thought may scream, "They are bored." But distance asks, what if they just remembered something urgent? What if they are anxious themselves? What if my assumption is wrong? The Stoic never assumes. The Stoic verifies. Epictetus said, "It's not events that upset us, but our interpretation of them." Think about that. Each day people miss reality, not because reality is hidden, but because they are wrapped in themselves. And here lies the paradox. When you are obsessed with yourself, you are blind to others. When you step outside yourself, you begin to see. You notice the tremor in a voice before it steadies. You notice hesitation before agreement. You notice what most never catch, because you are finally watching the world instead of your reflection. To live this way, start small. Begin with silence. In your next gathering, resist the urge to prove yourself in the first breath. Watch instead. Who listens? Who cuts off others? Who changes posture when someone powerful enters? Write this down in your memory like a soldier mapping the terrain. At first, you will itch to speak. That itch is the ego begging to be seen. Resist it. With time, the silence becomes your shield. Then, practice non-reactivity. Someone throws a passive-aggressive jab. Do not flinch. Do not fumble. Hold it in your hand as if it were a coin, turning it to the light. Ask, what does this reveal about them? What are they trying to claim? This is apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from disturbance. You still feel, but feeling does not command you. You still see, but now you see without distortion. In a world drunk on reaction, the one who does not react stands apart. And people sense it. They may never say it, but they feel your weight, your presence, your calm detachment from the performance. That presence is leverage, not manipulation, not deceit, just pure understanding. With time, you will notice the small truths others overlook. The glance that betrays attraction, the insecure joke disguised as humor, the person who fights for the last word, proving their weakness with every syllable. You will not judge them. You will not pity them. You will simply see. And when you choose to speak, your words will strike deeper because they are born not from noise, but from clarity. This is why detachment is not withdrawal. It is preparation. It is the sharpening of the blade before battle. It is how you outsmart without announcing it. And if you fear this will make you seem distant, know this. True presence is magnetic. The one who sees clearly is trusted because they cannot be manipulated, they cannot be fooled, they cannot be lost in illusion. You become the rare person whose attention is whole, sovereign, and when people stand before you, they feel seen, not because you flatter them, but because you truly notice. So I leave you with this challenge. Are you ready to let go of the comfort of reactivity for the strength of observation? Are you ready to trade the need to be heard for the power to see? Because once you do, the world shifts. The noise fades. The chaos organizes itself. And you discover that the confusion was never out there. It lived only in your head. And when that space is cleared, when the lens is finally clean, you begin to see. That is when everything changes. From here, the journey deepens, because the hardest person to observe with honesty is not a stranger across the table, it is the reflection staring back at you, and that is where we go next. Moving into the second chapter, picture yourself standing before a mirror that does not flatter. No soft light, no forgiving angles, just the raw reflection of how you move, how you sound, how you are. It is unsettling. Most people never see themselves this way. They assume they know who they are. They assume their words make sense, that their choices are logical, that their emotions are justified. But assumption is not truth. Familiarity is not clarity. And here is the sting. What you believe yourself to be and what others experience in your presence may be two very different stories. You may think you are confident, yet others feel the sharp edge of arrogance. You may think you are entertaining, yet others walk away drained. You may think you are respected when in truth you are merely tolerated. Now imagine a camera crew following you for a week. Every glance, every tone, every reaction captured, not to humiliate, not to judge, simply to study. How would you behave if you knew every moment would be reviewed by a stranger with no bias, no affection, just cold observation? Would you still cut people off mid-sentence? Would you still fake a laugh at jokes you found empty? Would you still deliver the sarcastic remark you tell yourself is harmless? That discomfort rising in you right now, that is awareness stirring for the first time. The Stoics spoke of this centuries ago. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But the opposite is also true. We imagine ourselves wiser, kinder, more balanced than we really are. That is why the greatest journey is not outward to conquer cities or upward to chase titles. The greatest journey is inward. To walk that road, you must learn to observe yourself as if you were a stranger. Here's where the change begins. You take a step back and suddenly you notice patterns. The tone you thought was calm is actually hurried. The posture you thought was relaxed is stiff. The laughter you thought was joy is just a reflex to avoid awkwardness. You realize you have been performing more than living. I do not say this to wound you. I say it because we all do it until we learn to stop. Self-observation in the Stoic sense is not cruelty. It is clarity without venom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That sting of discomfort when you first see yourself clearly, that is not the end of your confidence. That is the birth of your transformation. Let me give you a story. Sarah was the strong one in her circle, loud, energetic, always with an answer. She believed people leaned on her strength. One day, after a failed project, she overheard two colleagues whispering, "Sarah doesn't listen, she just wants to be right." It cut her deeply. At first, she burned with anger, but that night she replayed the meeting in her mind. Once, twice, again. And she saw it. She had cut people off. She had bulldozed through ideas, hiding insecurity beneath a mask of certainty. That night, she began journaling, not about what others did wrong, but about what she had done. She studied her own behavior like a character in a novel, and over time, she changed, not for their approval, but for her peace. Because deep down, she wanted to be a person she could respect, not a performance she had to defend. This is the gift of self-observation, not shame, but alignment. And yet, most run from it. They live behind the fortress of their identity, defending every action instead of examining it. They never ask the simple questions. Is the way I speak building or destroying? Does the energy I bring soothe or exhaust? Do people feel lighter or heavier after time with me? And so they remain blind, not out of malice, but out of neglect. But what if you dared to look? What if each day you stepped back as though you were a stranger studying your life? A CEO does not step into a boardroom without studying his presence. He knows one wrong note can cost millions. Why should your life demand any less care? You may not run a company, but you represent something every time you speak. Your values, your integrity, your example. And whether you realize it or not, people are watching. The most powerful ones in any room are not the loudest. They are the most self-aware. Start small. Watch yourself in moments of nervousness. Are you trying to prove or simply to share? Notice how you laugh when others laugh. Is it real or is it armor? Notice how you tell stories. Do you embellish to shine brighter or do you speak plainly with truth? Do not condemn yourself. Just notice. That noticing is pure gold. The Stoics called it prosos, vigilant attention to the self. Epictetus trained his students in this daily because without awareness, philosophy becomes decoration, not discipline. Here's a challenge. Tomorrow, live as though your life were a documentary, every moment recorded. At night, review it in your mind. Ask, what would a stranger see? Would they see authenticity or performance, courage or insecurity, kindness or ego? The first few times, it will sting. You will cringe at how often you bend your values just to fit in, but stay the course. Eventually, you stop performing. You begin to align. You build a life so honest that even an observer with no affection for you would feel respect. And here, the Stoic path becomes a transformation. You stop trying to manage how others see you. You start mastering how you see yourself. And paradoxically, when that changes, their perception changes too. Not because you crafted a new image, but because you embodied a new essence. This is what real confidence looks like. Not walking into a room thinking, I am better than all of you, but walking in, knowing your strengths and your flaws, and standing secure anyway. That kind of presence does not need applause. It does not need volume. It speaks quietly, consistently, unmistakably. From here, life deepens. You stop guessing who you are. You know, because you watched, because you adjusted, because you grew. You can look at the end of a day and whisper with pride, that was me, and I honor that. So the next time criticism rises or the urge to defend yourself flares, pause. Step outside, observe, ask, is this who I admire? If not, change something, even a fraction, because zero change is zero, but 0.1% change every day compounds into transformation beyond recognition. And once you see yourself clearly, without vanity, without fear, you unlock another secret. The way others see you is no longer a mystery, because how you carry yourself begins to shape their perception. And that leads us to the next stage, discovering how the way you speak, the way you pause, the way you move without trying makes others notice you anyway. That is where we go next. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine a room where every voice rises to compete for space, where laughter spills awkwardly to cover the tension, where words pile on words until meaning suffocates. You sit there and feel the noise pressing against your skin. And then it happens, a pause. Silence. Heavy, unplanned, undeniable. Watch what unfolds. Faces tighten, eyes dart. Someone rushes to fill the void. The silence exposes their nerves. It reveals their need. That is where your power begins. Silence is not emptiness. It is a blade. The Stoics knew this long before the world forgot. Epictetus reminded his students, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Yet how rarely do we listen? Not just to words, but to what beats beneath them, the hesitation, the fear, the hunger. A well-timed pause is a window into the soul of another, and if you are calm enough, still enough, patient enough, you will see through it. Here's where the lesson sharpens into story. A young lawyer, fresh in his career, found himself at the table of giants, 2 CEOs locked in negotiation. His only order, observe. At the height of the deal, one CEO made an aggressive offer, then fell silent. Seconds stretched like hours. The other CEO shifted, fidgeted, then began justifying, conceding, handing over ground never demanded. Within minutes, the deal was done. The young lawyer walked out with a truth branded into him forever. It was not logic that won that room, nor charm. It was silence, deliberate, patient, ruthless. Now imagine what happens when you carry this same principle into daily life. You do not need a boardroom. You only need the courage to resist the itch to fill the gap. Most people speak not to connect, but to convince. They ramble, over-explain, argue with themselves in public, trying desperately to be taken seriously. The Stoic does not fight for noise. The Stoic speaks less, but every word carries weight. A pause is not hesitation, it is proof of control. Try it. In your next conversation, before responding, count 2 beats in your mind. Let silence hang. Do not rush to rescue the moment. Watch. The other person will lean into the gap. They will reveal their motives, justify their stance, or expose their insecurity. They cannot help it. Your stillness draws their truth into the open, and while they unravel, you are calm, measured, sovereign. What makes this practice even more profound is what it shapes in you. The pause is not only a tool against others, it is a shield for yourself. In those 2 seconds, you step outside the cage of reactivity. You gain perspective. You ask not only what was just said, but why was it said? The moment you understand intention, you stop fighting shadows and start playing the real game. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That wisdom stretches into speech. When someone attacks you with arrogance or tries to rattle you with manipulation, the instinct is to rise in equal fire. But the Stoic pauses, not to retreat, but to choose. Is this worth answering? Does this serve peace or only ego? In that pause, the fury of response dissolves, and the need to reply often disappears altogether. But silence is not merely defensive, it is design. Picture a sculptor chiseling stone. The beauty of the statue is not just in what is removed, but in the space that remains. Speech is the same. Too many voices fill every moment with clutter, and in doing so, they erase their own impact. The ones who pause carve space around their words, so that each syllable stands like stone. They are remembered. Let's make this personal. Ask yourself, do you explain long after your point was clear? Do you laugh just to cover the awkwardness? Do you talk too fast, fearing silence will betray you? Each of those is a leak of strength. Every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from your inner bank. Every rushed sentence is a chance lost to command the space. Begin reclaiming it by owning your silence. Another story brings it home. Elise, a woman in customer relations, spoke with rapid fire, always eager to solve problems, to please, to prove herself. Her mentor gave her one piece of advice: slow down. Let silence do the work. In her next heated call, when the client finished a furious rant, Elise did something she had never done before: nothing. She stayed quiet, not cold, not afraid, just calm. The silence unsettled the client. He spoke again, softer this time, more open. By the end of the call, he thanked her not just for fixing the issue, but for how she listened. That is what silence creates, an opening for trust. But understand, this is not easy. It is a discipline. The urge to interrupt will burn in you. Your ego will panic. Let it. Let the silence breathe. You will discover that people are not only afraid of it, they respect the one who is not. And as you master silence outwardly, something deeper shifts inwardly. The external quiet becomes an inner stillness. You stop chasing validation with your voice. You stop fearing awkward pauses. You stop running from yourself. That is when presence becomes magnetic. Not because you shout, but because you carry weight. In a world where volume is mistaken for value, the quiet one becomes sovereign. Not mysterious. Sovereign. You no longer speak from need. You speak from choice. That is why people lean in when you finally break the silence. They sense you do not need to speak. You speak because it matters. This is the Stoic way of conversation. Grounded, strategic, present. You speak only when your words are worth more than your silence. And sometimes the wisest move is to remain silent. Remember this. A perfect sentence may impress for a moment, but a well-timed pause will echo far longer. So start here. In your next exchange, pause before responding. Watch how others fill the gap. Listen to what their silence reveals. Let your stillness shape the room. With practice, you will notice the shift. People begin to treat you differently, with patience, with respect, with attention. Not because you demanded it, but because you created the space for it. From here, the path deepens. You have seen others clearly. You have studied yourself. You have learned to speak with intention. Now comes the final step. Reading not just people, but patterns, not just words, but the hidden rhythms that shape every room you enter. That is where we go next. Entering the 4th chapter, picture this. Something is moving in your life right now, shaping the course of your days. You can feel its weight, but you can't yet name it. Not because it's hidden, not because it's out of reach, but because your eyes have not been trained to see it. The world is not random. Life is rhythm. People move in cycles, like rivers carving the same path again and again. Conversations, reactions, decisions, none of them happen in isolation. And if you can learn to read these rhythms, you stop reacting. You begin anticipating. You begin moving with wisdom instead of flinching in surprise. Now imagine a simple scene. A man stops at the same cafe every morning at 7:45. Orders the same drink, sits in the same corner, scrolls the same news feed. Most people would see nothing in it, just another stranger fading into the blur of routine. But a sharper eye notices, this is not just coffee, this is a loop. And every loop carries a weakness. If you understand the rhythm, you can step inside it, not to manipulate, to influence. That's different. Imagine one day you buy his drink before he asks and place it on his table. His face softens. Why? Because you spoke his pattern back to him. Awareness is power. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus once wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." He wasn't teaching control through force. He was pointing to alignment, to live in step with the order of things, not against it. Because the truth is, people think their choices are spontaneous. They're not. Most are grooves worn deep by years of repetition. You only see it if you are still enough, calm enough, disciplined enough to watch without judgment. Here's where the stakes rise. Imagine a negotiation with someone infamous for arrogance, difficult to sway, quick to dismiss. The room feels heavy with his presence. Most would feel frustration. But the Stoic doesn't drown in surface emotion. He recalls something that man said weeks earlier, a throwaway line. "I don't care about price. I just want to be first." That was the pattern. Ego, not value. So when the moment comes, the Stoic offers calmly, "This is a one-time deal. No one else will see it before you. No raised voice, no pressure, just alignment with rhythm." And the man agrees. That isn't trickery. That is mastery born of observation. But here's the warning. This awareness is a blade with two edges. Without virtue, it becomes manipulation, a way to exploit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. To see patterns is to hold fire in your hands. You must wield it with restraint, or it burns you too." The gift is not meant for deception, it is meant for harmony. And it doesn't stop with others, it turns back on you. Your life is one long rhythm. Your fears, your thoughts, your habits, they are not accidents. If you feel anxious before every gathering, that's not a mood, it's a pattern. If a morning walk always sharpens your mind, that's not random. It's a rhythm you can depend on. If you stall every time you face uncertainty, that's not fate working against you. It's your own routine repeating. Seneca said, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant." You can resist the current, or you can learn to read it and move with it. So start small. Map the moments when your energy dips. Notice which people drain you. Notice which places sharpen you. Then expand. In meetings, observe who speaks first and who waits. In conversations, see who longs for approval and who speaks from detachment. Patterns everywhere. The friend who always changes subject when emotions rise. The colleague who blames others whenever trouble comes. The one who flatters when they need something and vanishes when they don't. Once your eyes adjust, the world reveals itself, and you can never unsee it. But here is the price: patience. A mind addicted to instant gratification cannot see rhythm. Patterns stretch over time, and they only reveal themselves slowly. The Stoic resists the temptation to conclude too quickly. He records, he waits. While others react to what just happened, he watches what always happens. That is the difference between playing the game and seeing the board. Let me bring it home. Think of someone in your life who confuses you. They're unpredictable, hard to read, maybe even exhausting. For 2 weeks, do not confront. Do not judge. Simply observe. How do they respond when challenged? How does their tone shift when others are listening? What subjects do they avoid? What kind of praise draws them out? You are not spying, you are studying, you are building an emotional map. At the end, you will hold something most people never bother to create, a clear sketch of a human soul in its routines. Now imagine doing this with not one person, but 10, with everyone. Suddenly, you walk into rooms with quiet certainty. While others scramble to win the moment, you already know where the next 10 moves are going. This is not about being smarter, it is about being more present, more intentional, more aligned with reality itself. But remember, insight is responsibility. Use it not to bend others to your will, but to meet them where they already are. A salesman once said, "Enter the conversation already happening in the customer's mind." The Stoics would raise it higher. Enter the life already happening beneath the surface. Step into rhythm, but always with virtue. Because if you use awareness without integrity, it rots you from within. But awareness joined with virtue makes you untouchable, trusted, respected, quietly powerful. So remember this: people are patterns. Life is rhythm. You can fight it, or you can learn to read it. And once you can read it, you stop guessing. You stop fearing. You move with wisdom. You live 2 steps ahead while standing fully grounded. And now, having seen the rhythm that governs others and yourself, the journey asks one last question. What happens when you bring it all together, not to win battles, but to become untouchable? That is where we go next. You've walked through clarity of vision, through the courage of self-observation, through the weight of silence, and through the recognition of hidden patterns. Each step has given you steadiness, but steadiness is only the beginning. Knowledge alone does not crown you, it prepares you. Once your sight is clear and your ground is firm, the real challenge emerges. How do you hold your center when fire rises around you? How do you walk through conflict, chaos, and noise without being bent out of shape? This is where wisdom leaves the page and becomes force in action. Moving into this chapter, Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, rain crashing against your skin, wind tearing at your clothes, yet you remain still. Around you everything howls, but you do not flinch. That is what silence feels like in the heat of conflict. Others roar and claw for your reaction. They want you to break, to match their chaos with chaos. But the one who holds stillness holds power. Now think of the last time someone disrespected you. Maybe it was a sharp remark. Maybe it was a mocking laugh in a room full of people. Your chest tightened. Your first instinct was to answer back, to prove them wrong, to throw your words like stones. And yet, what happened when you reacted? You gave them what they wanted, your energy. You surrendered the high ground without even noticing. Seneca once wrote, "He who angers you conquers you. That truth burns. When you erupt, you hand over control. When you withhold, you keep it." Imagine a moment of tension. One man unleashes a barrage of insults, hoping to spark a reaction, but the other remains still, unmoved. The crowd, sensing the change, shifts its attention. The one who rages begins to shrink, while the one who remains calm grows stronger. The silent one grows larger in their eyes. Why? Because silence unmasks intent. It shows who is in command of themselves and who is enslaved to impulse. Let me share a story. Years ago, a colleague of mine worked under a manager infamous for his temper. In meetings, the manager would belittle him, cutting off his points with sarcasm. One day, the colleague chose a different approach. When the manager threw a barb across the table, instead of defending himself, he leaned back, folded his hands, and said nothing. The silence stretched. The manager grew uneasy, repeated himself louder, then stumbled over his own words. By the end, the room had turned, not against the quiet man, but against the one who revealed his insecurity through noise. That day, respect shifted silently, not with a sword, with stillness. This is the discipline the Stoics practiced. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." In the context of conflict, that means refusing to mirror rage with rage, pettiness with pettiness. The pause, the refusal to be baited, becomes your shield. In that shield, you gather time to choose, do I respond at all? If I speak, will it serve peace or feed my ego? Often, in that pause, the need to respond evaporates. But silence is not only defense, it is also design. Think of silence as the blank space in a painting. Without it, colors clash, forms collapse, the beauty disappears. In a clash with another human being, silence gives shape to your presence. It tells the other person, and everyone watching, that you are not moved by provocation. You move only by choice, and that frightens those who rely on control. Ask yourself now, how many times have you wasted energy explaining yourself to someone who had no intention of listening? How many times have you fed the fire by answering a fool in his own tone? Every unnecessary word is a coin stolen from your inner treasury. Every reaction, a piece of yourself given away. Stop the bleeding. Own the silence. There is another story worth holding. A young woman, often mocked by her peers, learned the strength of withholding. In one incident, her classmates laughed at her ideas, expecting her to stammer in defense. She smiled gently, stayed quiet, and returned her gaze to her notes. The laughter faltered. Within seconds, the silence she created turned the mirror back on them. They looked childish. She looked untouchable. Silence became her crown. Do not mistake this discipline for weakness. Silence is not retreat. It is a statement. I am not yours to provoke. The world is full of people addicted to reaction, eager to drag you into their storm. Your power is in refusing to step inside. When you remain calm, the storm eventually spends itself, and you are still standing. At this stage, the deeper truth unfolds. External silence begins to create internal silence. The more you practice withholding words in conflict, the less your mind scrambles in panic. You begin to carry stillness with you, not as an act, but as a way of being. You stop running from discomfort. You stop fearing awkward moments. You stop explaining your worth to those who never intended to see it. And suddenly, the room feels your presence before you speak a word. In a culture that mistakes loudness for strength, quiet control is a shock. It makes people lean in. It makes them adjust. You become the one who does not beg for space. You command it by how little you need to defend yourself. That is sovereignty. That is the power of silence. So remember this the next time someone pushes your buttons. Their noise is bait. Do not bite. Hold your silence. Watch them reveal themselves while you conserve your strength, because the one who holds silence holds the power. And from here, we step deeper, for silence is only one layer of mastery. Beyond it lies another strength, the ability to guard your focus like treasure, so no one can steal it from you. That is where we go next. Advancing to the next chapter, imagine your mind as a fortress standing tall on a hill. Inside are your thoughts, your energy, your attention, the most valuable resources you possess. Yet, most people leave the gates wide open. Strangers wander in. Noise floods the courtyard. Every distraction steals a piece of your strength, until you are left wondering why you feel so empty at the end of the day. Now, picture the moments you've lost to this invasion. Hours scrolling through feeds that gave you nothing but comparison and fatigue. Conversations that drained your spirit instead of feeding it. Arguments that had no end, no point, yet consumed your energy like fire consumes dry wood. And when the day closed, you felt robbed, not by others, but by your own lack of defense. Epictetus warned, if a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along. Those words sting because they're true. Here's where the shift begins. A focused mind cannot be manipulated. A distracted one can be led anywhere. Consider the story of a student preparing for a life-changing exam. He sat at his desk every morning determined to study, but each time his phone buzzed, he checked it. Each message pulled him away for minutes at a time. When the exam came, he stumbled, not from lack of intelligence, but from 1,000 stolen fragments of focus. Contrast this with another student who placed her phone in another room, who studied in blocks of silence, who guarded her concentration like treasure. She walked into the exam steady, not frantic. The difference was not brilliance. The difference was protection. In a world where everyone is shouting, the one who guards their focus becomes rare. Guarding it does not mean avoiding the world. It means choosing what deserves your energy. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Your focus is the thread that weaves your life. Cut it, and the fabric unravels. Protect it, and your life holds shape. Let me give you another example. A friend of mine once launched a small business. At first, he poured his energy into his craft, but soon he began checking the competition's updates, replying to every message instantly, chasing every new idea. His days grew scattered. His progress stalled. One day he decided, no more. He blocked time in the morning just for deep work, shut out every notification, and kept his phone in another room. Within months, his business doubled, not because he worked longer, but because he worked undivided. Focus turned his effort into fire. Ask yourself now, where are you leaking attention? Is it the endless scroll before bed, the constant need to reply, the habit of saying yes to conversations that leave you drained? Every leak weakens your fortress. Every leak leaves you vulnerable to being steered by others. To outsmart the world quietly, you must learn to starve distractions. This discipline is not glamorous. It's quiet. It's choosing to finish what matters instead of chasing what shines. It's refusing to let gossip, comparison, or noise steal your day. And it is in those unseen choices that you build strength others can feel. When you guard your focus, people sense it. They notice your clarity. They notice that you are not pulled by every breeze. They may not name it, but they respect it. At this stage, you must understand something vital. Focus is not only defense, it is direction. When you decide what deserves your attention, you decide what your life will become. A distracted person cannot build, but a focused person can carve stone with patience until it becomes a cathedral. So, protect your focus. Say no to the invitations that add nothing. Put away the screens that scatter your mind. Carve time where nothing enters your gates. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, like silence in a noisy room. But then, it will feel like freedom. And freedom is always worth the discomfort. Remember this: attention is the currency of life. Spend it carelessly and you end in debt. Guard it wisely and you create wealth no one can steal. The Stoics knew this well. Control your mind and you control everything that matters. And from here, the path deepens again. Because once you've learned to guard your focus, the next battle is not against the world outside, but against the weaker version of yourself that rises every day. That is where the journey leads next. Now, let's step into the next chapter. Imagine walking through life with the unwavering confidence that nothing can knock you off balance. The noise, the distractions, the opinions, they all fade into the background. You're not immune to challenges, but you've mastered the art of being untouchable. No matter what comes your way, you remain grounded, centered, and unaffected by the chaos that surrounds you. This is the next level of mastery, not just surviving life's storms, but thriving in them. People will test you. The world will throw obstacles your way. But the moment you stop reacting to everything that comes your way, you step into your true power. The Stoics understood this. They knew that the key to true strength was not in reacting to life's external forces, but in mastering how you respond. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If you control your thoughts, you control your experience." Let me give you a story to illustrate this. A man named Daniel worked in a high-stress environment, surrounded by deadlines, expectations, and constant pressure. His colleagues were always rushing, panicking, and caught up in the chaos of the office. But Daniel was different. He had learned to breathe through the chaos, to pause before reacting, and to move with a sense of calm certainty. One day, his team faced a critical issue that could have led to a massive failure. Everyone was panicking, pointing fingers and scrambling for solutions. But Daniel, instead of joining in the frenzy, simply sat back, took a deep breath, and asked the right questions. He allowed the chaos to unfold around him while remaining unaffected. In the end, his calmness led the team to a solution they hadn't seen before. This is what it means to be untouchable. You don't have to shout, fight, or panic. You simply remain still, aware, and present. You let the chaos swirl, but you don't allow it to disturb your peace. You don't waste energy reacting. You invest it in moving with purpose. And that is where your true strength lies, being unshaken in a world that thrives on distractions. But the secret to becoming untouchable is this: you must choose to stop being swept away by other people's emotions and opinions. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about protecting your energy. When you stop letting every small thing affect you, you reclaim your power. Now, ask yourself, how often do you let the opinions of others or the chaos around you dictate your actions? How often do you react instead of responding with intention? The more you let go of external control, the more you take command of your life. You become the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise, the one everyone looks to for guidance. From here, we move deeper. The next step is not just about controlling yourself. It's about creating an environment where nothing can touch you, where you shape your surroundings, not by force, but by how you move through them. That's where we go next. Entering the final stage, imagine walking into a room, your presence so steady, so undeniable, that the atmosphere shifts when you enter. It's not because you've done anything extraordinary, it's because you've learned the power of moving through life without being moved by it. The energy in the room adjusts to your calm, to your certainty. People notice not just your body, but your grounded presence. This is where you shape your environment, not by fighting it, but by mastering how you move through it. At this stage, the question is no longer about reacting to the world around you, it's about owning it. You no longer allow external circumstances to define your peace. The world becomes something you move through with ease and control. The chaos that once felt overwhelming no longer rattles you. Instead, you become the force that gently moves the world around you. It's not about dominating others. It's about being so anchored in yourself that nothing can disrupt your core. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same principle applies to your inner peace. You do not need everything around you to be perfect to feel at peace. The more you release the need to control everything, the more powerful you become. When you don't need the world to bend to your will, you become unshaken in the face of whatever comes. Let me give you an example. A colleague of mine was always in the middle of office drama, caught up in every conversation, every dispute. She was constantly reacting, trying to fix problems as they arose. But one day, she decided to stop. She didn't stop caring, but she stopped jumping into every conflict, every issue. Instead, she quietly observed, took her time, and only responded when it truly mattered. She wasn't drawn into the noise anymore, and over time, something amazing happened. People started seeking her out for advice. She hadn't done anything special. She simply stopped reacting. She learned to move through the noise without being consumed by it. This is the key to creating an environment where you are untouchable, not by avoiding the noise, but by not letting it affect you. You choose how much energy you give to every situation. You decide how much of the chaos you allow into your life. And when you master this, the world starts to move around you rather than through you. The challenge, though, is this. Can you hold your space when everything around you is telling you to move, to act, to react? Can you remain still, centered, when everyone else is running in circles? Most people can't. They react to everything. But you are different. You've learned to master your own energy, and because of that, your presence becomes a quiet force that shapes the room. Now, think about how you move through life. Are you constantly swept up in the chaos around you, or have you learned to create your own rhythm that no external force can disrupt? The moment you stop reacting to every distraction is the moment you take full control of your life. And with that control comes the ability to shape your environment. But the true challenge is this: how do you maintain that control when others push against it? When their energy, their chaos, their demands seek to disrupt your calm? How do you continue to hold your space when everything around you tests it? That's where we move next. Now, imagine entering a room where the noise is deafening, words are flying, people are talking over each other, yet you remain silent. You aren't listening to the sound, you're listening to the space between the words. You're watching the patterns beneath the surface, the subtle cues, the unspoken truth. How do people move when they think no one is looking? What do they leave unsaid? This is where true understanding lies, not in the noise, but in the silence. It's in the moments when people reveal their truest selves, unaware that you're watching. Have you ever noticed how people treat others when they think they can't be seen? A fleeting glance, an offhand comment, a shift in body language. These are the moments when character isn't just displayed, it's uncovered. And if you've trained yourself to see, you'll notice these tiny movements. You'll see someone's true nature in how they treat the waiter, the janitor, or the person who can't help them. This is the truth the Stoics embraced. The world doesn't reveal itself in grand gestures. It reveals itself in the small, seemingly insignificant actions. Seneca once wrote, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. People think they can hide who they are. They think they can put on a mask and play a role. But when the pressure rises, the mask slips. When a person feels safe, they reveal what they're really made of. And when you start observing this truth, you stop looking at the surface. You begin to see the currents that move beneath it. Let me share a story. A woman named Emma once worked in a high-pressure environment. On the outside, everyone appeared friendly, smiles, small talk, pleasantries. But Emma noticed something that others missed. Every time her boss was around, the tone in the room changed. People who were normally chatty suddenly became quiet, their eyes darting nervously. She didn't need to hear the words. She saw the rhythm. She saw the subtle shift, and she understood. She understood that the way people behaved around her boss revealed far more than their smiles. In the moments of tension, she saw their true feelings: fear, insecurity, and the drive to impress. That's when Emma realized, when you truly see, you stop reacting to what people say and start responding to what they do. The way they move in the room, the way they speak to the vulnerable, the way they carry themselves when no one's looking, those are the signs. And when you start noticing these signs, you begin to understand not just others, but yourself too. But here's the key. You don't judge them for it. This isn't about pointing fingers. This is about understanding, about becoming an observer, not a critic, about noticing the patterns and using them to navigate the world without being swept by the chaos others create. Take a moment now. Think about the people you encounter daily, the ones who smile at you but never offer you their full presence. The ones who talk the most when they need validation but go silent when their ego is threatened. Think of the person who talks down to others to feel important. You see their words, yes, but do you see their rhythm? Do you see what drives them? The Stoics weren't interested in judgment. They were interested in awareness. Epictetus once said, "When we are offended at someone's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings." Every time someone treats you poorly, it's an opportunity to observe not just them, but your own reactions. What does their treatment stir in you? What pattern does it reveal in you? And if you see a pattern in others, how do you choose to respond? Here's the lesson. People are not always what they appear to be. They are what they reveal in their actions, in the spaces between their words. And when you learn to observe these patterns without rushing to judgment, you begin to move through life with a quiet understanding that others don't have. They're busy reacting, you're busy observing, and that gives you an edge that can't be taken from you. The most powerful people are the ones who see clearly, not just what's on the surface, but what's hidden beneath. And this clarity doesn't come from studying others alone. It comes from studying yourself too. The patterns you observe in others will reflect back on you. Are you reacting to life, or are you moving with it? So ask yourself, do you truly see the people around you? Do you understand their patterns? Or are you so caught up in your own that you miss the deeper rhythm of the world? When you start to see beyond the surface, life becomes more predictable. You stop being surprised. You stop being manipulated, and you begin to move with purpose. And now, having learned to observe, to listen, to see what others miss, it's time to take the final step. It's time to become the person others can't help but respect, the one whose presence shapes the space around them. That is where we go next. Entering this next stage, imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves crash, the winds howl, but you stand firm, untouched by the chaos around you. While the world swirls in turbulence, you are the calm, the center. This is what it means to be in control of the space you occupy. Not just to fill a room with your presence, but to command it with your stillness, your clarity, your purpose. Think of how many times you've walked into a room and felt the tension immediately, the voices, the energy, the rush. It's easy to feel swept away by it. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of being pulled in, you stood still, grounded, unshaken? What if the room adjusted to you rather than you adjusting to it? That's the power of mastering the space you occupy. And this power doesn't come from volume. It doesn't come from force. It comes from inner peace, from being in tune with the environment and allowing it to bend without breaking your center. Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. The room doesn't control you. The noise doesn't control you. You are the one who shapes it. You decide how you show up. And once you learn to control your own presence, you'll notice that the world begins to bend in your direction. People respond to your stillness, your focus, your clarity." A friend once told me about a meeting he had with a powerful figure. The room was charged with energy. Everyone was talking over one another, trying to stake their claim, but he didn't engage in the chaos. He simply listened. He let the noise subside, and then, with calm, clarity, and authority, he spoke. The room fell silent. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to fight for attention. He simply commanded it by choosing peace over panic. The others, unaware of what had shifted, found themselves listening. They were drawn to his presence, not because he demanded it, but because he embodied calm and control. Mastering the space you occupy doesn't mean isolating yourself or withdrawing from the world. It means entering every situation with a quiet understanding of where you stand, of what you need, and of what you bring to the table. It means taking control over your environment, not by force, but by knowing how to move through it with intention. So ask yourself, what space do you occupy right now? When you walk into a room, do you shrink, hoping not to be noticed? Or do you stand tall, fully aware of the energy you bring? The way you show up shapes how the world will respond. And once you understand this, you realize that everything around you can be shaped too. Once you've mastered the space you occupy, you no longer have to fight for a place in the world. You create the environment around you, one where you don't just survive, but truly thrive. And that, my friend, is where we're headed next. Advancing to the next stage, imagine entering a room where every person speaks over the other, desperately trying to be heard. There's a loudness in the air, words filling the space without meaning. Then you step in, quiet. You don't need to fill the silence. You allow it to speak for you. And as the noise continues, your stillness starts to shape the room. People notice you not because you speak the loudest, but because your presence demands respect without a word. Here's the truth. How you speak is how you command. The way you use your voice can either pull you into the chaos, or it can give you control over it. Most people rush to fill every silence, to argue every point, to constantly prove their worth with words. But the Stoics knew something different. They knew the value of measured speech, of strategic silence. They understood that true power doesn't lie in how much you speak, but in how much you hold back. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That includes conversations. When you speak, you don't need to raise your voice to prove your point. You need to speak with purpose, with clarity. Think about the last time you found yourself in a heated conversation. Perhaps someone challenged you, maybe even mocked you, and you felt the urge to defend yourself. What did you do? Did you lash out in response? Or did you pause, let the moment unfold, and choose your words carefully? The difference is huge. A well-timed pause doesn't just stop the noise. It amplifies your presence. It forces people to listen. It gives your words weight, not because you've spoken more, but because you've spoken with intention. I once knew a woman, Sarah, who would always jump into conversations to make her point. She believed that in a room full of voices, the only way to be heard was to speak louder. But she quickly learned the truth. She noticed that when she spoke, people listened, but when she paused, people really listened. They leaned in, waited for her next words, and what she said carried more meaning than if she'd spoken over the noise. Over time, Sarah learned to shape the conversation, not by dominating it, but by mastering her own voice. This is how you command a room. Not by yelling over others, but by choosing when to speak and when to stay silent. The Stoics taught us that silence is a source of great strength. In those moments where the world expects you to fill the silence with words, the real power is in doing the opposite. Let it breathe. Let people wonder. And when you do speak, let your words land with purpose. So I ask you, how do you use your voice? Are you caught up in the noise, trying to match it? Or are you holding back, speaking only when it matters? The next time you enter a conversation, ask yourself, what's the intention behind my words? Because it's not the number of words you speak, but the meaning behind them that will shape the space around you. And from here, we move forward. Because once you learn the art of speaking with power, the next challenge is to move through any environment without ever needing to prove yourself again. That is where we go next. Let's step into the final chapter. Imagine walking through a bustling crowd. The noise, the rush, the pressure to keep up with everyone else. People push past, grab your attention, pull you in different directions, but you remain unshaken. You are the calm in the storm. No matter how fast the world moves around you, you walk through it at your own pace, in your own rhythm. This is the power of mastering yourself, of becoming untouchable. At this stage, the question isn't about how to survive the chaos. It's about how to move through it with strength and purpose. You no longer react to the noise. You don't get caught up in every argument, every distraction, every moment of pressure. You've learned to navigate the world from a place of inner peace, from a center that no external force can disturb. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Most people are slaves to their circumstances, constantly reacting, constantly adjusting to the whims of the world. But the Stoic moves differently. They don't bend with every gust of wind. They stand firm, knowing exactly how to respond. They don't let the world dictate their emotions. They choose how to react. Consider this story. A man, well into his career, was faced with a situation that many would call a crisis. A major deal was falling apart, deadlines were being missed, and his colleagues were panicking. The room was filled with tension, voices rising, everyone trying to fix what seemed broken. But he didn't join in the chaos. He stood still. He asked the right questions, waited for the right answers. And in the end, when everything was settled, it was his calmness that had led the team to success. He wasn't shaken because he wasn't reacting to the storm around him. He had already mastered the art of staying unshaken in the midst of it. This is the strength that comes with understanding yourself and the world around you. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being present in the moment without letting it control you. The world is going to keep throwing distractions, pressures, and challenges at you. But you can choose not to be overwhelmed by them. You choose how to move through it. The next time you're in a situation where everything feels chaotic, remember this: you don't have to let it take you down. You don't have to react immediately or feel like you're drowning in the noise. Pause, stand still, breathe. When you act from that place of inner peace, you will always move forward with strength. So ask yourself, in the chaos of life, how much power do you give away by reacting? How much do you lose by letting external pressures shape you? The moment you stop being pulled by the tides and start moving on your own terms, you begin to see how powerful you truly are. Now that you've learned to be unshaken, the real power comes when you no longer react to the world, you shape it. This is where we move forward, mastering not just our reactions, but our environment itself. Here's how true strength is built, not by shouting louder or forcing your way, but by mastering yourself. When you see with clarity, observe without judgment, speak with intention, and move with wisdom, you rise above the noise. Influence flows naturally. Respect follows quietly. If this spoke to you, subscribe and keep walking this path with me. Comment "I observe" to affirm your choice of clarity over chaos. Stay grounded, stay sharp, and be ready for the next step of quiet power.